But right now, it's crunch time for the most high-profile child abduction case in history.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at 20 of the most disturbing kidnappings throughout history.
For this woman, stepping onto this school bus is an act of courage. Laura Yazzie Fanning was just 5 years old in kindergarten when 26 of her fellow classmates and their bus driver were kidnapped and buried alive.
Aldo Moro.
30 years ago this month, the extreme left terrorist group, the Red Brigades, murdered former Italian Prime Minister Aldo Moro, who they'd kidnapped and held for nearly 2 months.
Regarded as one of Italy's most important post-war leaders, Aldo Moro served as the country's prime minister between 1963 and 68 and 1974 to 76. Just 2 years later, on March 16, 1978, Moro was kidnapped by a far-left terrorist group called the Red Brigades. The group ambushed Moro's convoy and killed 5 of his bodyguards before taking him hostage. Moro was held in a secret location for 55 days while the terrorists demanded the release of various imprisoned members. The Italian government, led at the time by Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti, adopted a strict line of firmness and refused to negotiate. So, on May 9, 1978, Moro was murdered, and his body was later found in the trunk of a car.
You've been accused of refusing to negotiate with the Red Brigades because you actually wanted Moro to be killed.
Why would I have wanted Moro's death? If I hadn't refused to negotiate, the state would have collapsed, and we would have found ourselves in a crisis.
Paul Getty.
It's Friday night, in October of 1993. And in Northern California, 3 junior high school girls are having a slumber party.
Slumber parties should be a time of fun, but it was anything but for 12-year-old Polly Klaas of Petaluma, California. On October 1, 1993, an intruder, later identified as Richard Allen Davis, entered Polly's bedroom armed with a knife, tied up her friends, and abducted her. The case drew national attention, with widespread media coverage and massive volunteer searches. Actress Winona Ryder also personally offered a $200,000 reward for her return, having grown up in Petaluma. But despite the many prayers and massive search effort, the story ended in tragedy. Davis was arrested for her kidnapping, and he led authorities to her remains in rural Sonoma County. He was subsequently sentenced to death, showing zero remorse during his dramatic sentencing.
He led them to a field near an abandoned lumber mill. Out in the field, under some boards, investigators found the body of Polly Klaas.
Christopher Abeta.
In tonight's special report, a local family is still holding on to hope that their missing son will be found after more than 2 decades.
One of the most horrifying kidnappings imaginable is when a baby is swiped from their own crib. That's what happened on July 15, 1986, when 7-month-old Christopher Abeta was abducted from his family's home in Colorado Springs. When his mother awoke, Christopher was already gone, and the front door was partially open. Abeta's father Gil believed that a woman named Emma Bradshaw was responsible, as Gil had just ended an affair with her and she had a history of break-ins. However, no charges were ever laid against her. Despite nationwide searches and the family's decades-long efforts to find him, Christopher has never been located, and both of his parents have since passed away without receiving any answers.
Gil says he thinks Bradshaw wanted a lasting relationship with him, and Christopher got in the way.
I wasn't going to abandon him or anything. I had no other plans, and so she knew that. She knew how I felt, and he became in the way.
Emmett Till.
Mr. Bryant, you ain't got to do this. You're just a young boy.
Better shut them eyes.
America saw one of its most infamous lynchings on August 28, 1955. Black teenager Emmett Till was visiting relatives in Money, Mississippi when he was accused of whistling at local white woman Carolyn Bryant. Days later, her husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother J.W. Milam kidnapped Till from his uncle's home. They brutally beat the teen before executing him and throwing his body into the Tallahatchie River, weighing it down with a cotton gin fan. When Till's body was finally recovered, Emmett's mother, Mamie Till Mobley, held an open casket funeral in Chicago, showcasing Till's grotesque body to the public and exposing the nation to the horrors of racial violence. His killers were acquitted by an all-white jury in 1955.
Bo's body was found in a river. Preacher just identified him to the sheriff. He recognized the ring Bo was wearing. I'm so sorry, Mamie.
The Princes in the Tower.
Those uncles which you want were dangerous. Your Grace attended to their sugared words, but looked not on the poison of their hearts. God keep you from them and from such false friends.
We're going back to the 15th century for this one. In 1483, Edward V of England and his younger brother Richard were lodged in the Tower of London by their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. This was supposedly to prepare for Edward's upcoming coronation, but in reality, it was mostly a power play by Richard to have himself crowned king, and he claimed the throne as Richard III. Meanwhile, the princes were never seen again. Many contemporaries believed they were murdered, with virtually all of the blame going towards Richard III. In 1674, 2 small human skeletons were discovered inside the tower, and while it has never been proven, they have long been thought to be those of the missing children.
Dream on thy cousins, smothered in the tower. Thy nephew's souls bid thee despair and die.
The Ariel Castro kidnappings.
Help me, I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm fine now.
Between 2002 and 2004, Cleveland man Ariel Castro kidnapped 3 young women off the street: Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus. He held them captive in his nondescript home for roughly a decade, subjecting them to repeated physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. The women were chained up, forced to live in the dark under deplorable conditions, and even impregnated on multiple occasions. But in May 2013, Amanda Berry managed to escape and alerted a neighbor, leading to the rescue of all 3 victims. Their captor was arrested that same day. Castro eventually took his own life while serving his sentence, and his house was demolished and turned into a small green space.
I was finally face to face with the man I remember seeing through that broken door. My personal hero.
So when they say, dude, you a hero, man, good looking now, I say, man, you need to shut up.
Really?
And realize who the hero is.
Graham Thorne.
Walked into the place and Mrs. Thorne was there and the phone rang. She answered and then she handed it to me. I took the receiver and spoke into the phone and this bloke said, I've got your son and he's on £25,000 and if I don't get it by 5 o'clock, I'll feed him to the sharks.
It's not inconceivable to say that the murder of Graham Thorne changed Australia forever. His parents had recently won £100,000 in a lottery, and details of the win were published in the press, including, bizarrely, their names and even their home address. Naturally, this made them huge targets. On July 7, 1960, 8-year-old Graham Thorne was abducted while on his way to school by Stephen Bradley, a Hungarian immigrant who sought £25,000 and used Thorne as ransom. Unfortunately, the boy's body was found in some bushes about 6 weeks later, and Bradley was found to have murdered him. The case shocked the nation, leading to Bradley's conviction for murder and sparking changes in laws around the publicity of lottery winnings.
When those fathers, or most of the fathers, came home from work, they got together and walked across and made an inspection then. And the result of that was that they found the body of Graham Thorne.
Patty Hearst.
This story had it all. A pretty young rich girl snatched from her home by terrorists, and then there were plot twists that no one could predict.
It was a made-for-television kidnapping.
In February of 1974, 19-year-old Patricia Hearst, the granddaughter of newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst, was kidnapped from her California apartment by a left-wing revolutionary group called the Symbionese Liberation Army. The SLA demanded that her wealthy family fund a massive food distribution operation to the poor. Weeks later, Hearst began appearing in SLA propaganda tapes, declaring support for the group and adopting the nickname Tanya. In April, she was even photographed wielding a rifle during a bank robbery conducted by the SLA, fueling debate over whether she had been coerced or had willingly joined the group. Hearst was eventually found in 1975 and convicted of bank robbery, but her 7-year sentence was later commuted by President Jimmy Carter.
Social media can still be brutal to Patty Hearst even to this day, with many people saying that a rich girl got away with something that a poor girl wouldn't have.
Jacob Wetterling.
There was a boy who loved all the things young boys do, football and hockey, growing up in the seemingly innocent oasis of a small town. One day, nearly 10 years ago, that innocence was taken away.
Stories like this are what fueled the stranger danger craze of the 1980s and effectively ended the era of free-roaming children. Around 9 p.m. on October 22, 1989, Jacob Wetterling was riding bikes with his brother and a friend when they were approached by a masked man. The man was armed with a gun and forced the boys into a ditch. He then selected Wetterling and drove away with him, leaving the others unharmed. The boy remained missing for nearly 3 decades. Fast forward to 2016, when a man named Danny Heinrich confessed to abducting, assaulting, and murdering Wetterling. He then took authorities to the boys' remains, which were found in a pasture outside Paynesville, Minnesota, and identified by dental records.
Good evening. A stunning cold case confession today in Minnesota appears to bring a 27-year-old murder mystery that gripped the nation to an end, as a family that has lived with decades of anguish and uncertainty finally learned what happened to their little boy.
Ursula Herrmann.
Pretty neat, huh?
This 10-year-old German girl is perhaps better known as the girl in the box, and for rather unfortunate reasons. Herrmann was abducted while riding home on her bicycle on September 15, 1981. Soon after, her family received a ransom demand for 2 million Deutschmarks. The family agreed on paying the ransom, but unfortunately, it was already too late. About 3 weeks after Herrmann's disappearance, her dead body was found inside a box in the Weingarten forest. Her abductor had placed her in there with blankets, food, books, and even a radio, intending on keeping her alive. However, she did not receive sufficient oxygen inside the box and quickly suffocated, likely within hours of being placed inside.
I built it for the kids in the neighborhood. I thought they could use it as a kind of a clubhouse, or I don't know. You want to be the first one to try it out?
Really?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Go ahead. Be fun.
Julie Dart and Stephanie Slater.
We didn't hear from him for quite a while, but we were always sure he would come back. And sure enough, in October...
As you are nowhere near on my tail, the time has come to collect my £140,000 from you.
On July 9, 1991, Michael Sams kidnapped Julie Dart and took her to his warehouse in Nottinghamshire, where he chained her up and had her write her own ransom note, demanding £140,000 from her boyfriend. However, he had no intention of freeing Dart and murdered her shortly after. The following January, Sams kidnapped a second victim, Stephanie Slater, and took her to his workshop. He held her captive in a makeshift coffin-like box for 8 days, threatening her life and again demanding a ransom. This time he made good on his promise, and Slater was released unharmed after her employer paid £175,000. Luckily, Sams was arrested after his story appeared on Crime Watch, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
And then he said, "Never mind." Even when I think about it, I go cold.
Have you got the money? Who's this, please? Never mind. Have you got the money?
I just went hysterical. I knew immediately it was his voice.
John Paul Getty III.
We would like to publish it, Miss Getty. The photograph of the ear. It's news, and we are a newspaper.
In July 1973, John Paul Getty III, the 16-year-old grandson of oil tycoon J. Paul Getty, was kidnapped by a Calabrian crime syndicate. His wealthy grandfather refused to pay the $17 million ransom, but after months of negotiations, Getty's severed ear was mailed to a local newspaper. It was then that Getty agreed to pay, but only what was tax-deductible, while the boy's father borrowed the remainder at 4% interest. Getty was freed after 5 months in captivity, but he never fully recovered. He quickly developed issues with substance use, which in turn led to a stroke that left him with paralysis, unable to speak, and with nearly zero sight at just 25. He lived in poor health until his death in 2011 at the age of 54.
My tax attorneys have discovered that while ransom payments are not deductible under the tax code, I could write off the interest if I loan the ransom money to my son.
Jaime Closs.
Jake Patterson can never take away my courage. He thought he could control me, but he couldn't. I feel like what he did is what a coward would do. I was brave, and he was not.
Shortly before 1 a.m. on October 15, 2018, 21-year-old Jake Patterson approached the house of 13-year-old Jaime Closs in Barron, Wisconsin. Patterson had reportedly become fixated on Jaime after seeing her board a school bus and wanted her for himself. Patterson shot Closs's father through the door, then barged into the house and found Jaime and her mother Denise huddled in the bathroom. He then bound Jaime with duct tape, murdered Denise, and then led Jaime from the house. He took the kidnapped girl to a remote cabin and kept her there for 88 days, often trapping her directly under his bed. Luckily, she managed to escape on January 10, 2019, and Patterson was sentenced to life in prison.
Right under the deck, you've got these 2 small windows that lead to what looks like a basement. Could this be where Jaime was held captive.
Amber Hagerman.
Somebody kidnapped Amber. He's gone, Richard.
9-year-old Amber Hagerman has been missing since Saturday.
Don't hurt my baby, please. She's an innocent child, please.
Surely you've heard of the Amber Alert? Well, that was created after the events of Amber Hagerman's dramatic disappearance. In January 1996, the 9-year-old child was abducted while riding her bike near her grandparents' home in Arlington, Texas. The police were quickly informed, resulting in a massive search of the surrounding area. Tragically, her body was found near a creek just 4 days later, and her murderer was never caught. Amber's case horrified the country and highlighted the need for rapid community alerts in the case of child abductions. In response, authorities created the country's first Amber Alert system, which was named in the late girl's memory.
The condition that we found Amber, it was difficult to collect some evidence.
But detectives say with new DNA technology, there is hope.
Madeleine McCann.
The world hasn't stopped looking for Madeleine McCann. The sweet 3-year-old snatched from a Portuguese seaside resort in Praia de Luz in 2007.
The story of Madeleine McCann is widely regarded as one of the most infuriating child abductions. The 3-year-old was vacationing with her family in Portugal and was put to bed with her siblings at 8:30 p.m. Meanwhile, her parents, Kate and Jerry, went out to a restaurant with some friends. Kate came to check on the kids around 10 and found Madeleine missing. The story spread far and wide. It was extensively covered in the media, and both Kate and Jerry were widely scrutinized for their behavior. To this day, the child's disappearance remains unsolved, although it's believed that she was abducted by a man named Christian Bruckner. He is currently considered the prime suspect by German authorities, although no charges have been laid.
It could all come down to this woman, fighting to keep the monster behind bars. The same monster she's convinced attacked her.
Elizabeth Smart.
14-year-old Elizabeth Smart ripped from her bedroom in the middle of the night, missing for 9 months, until a remarkable turn of events.
Imagine watching an episode of America's Most Wanted, then strolling down the street and seeing the criminals you had just learned about. That is how Elizabeth Smart was freed after 9 months of captivity. The 14-year-old from Salt Lake City was kidnapped from her bedroom on June 5, 2002. Her abductors, a self-proclaimed religious prophet named Brian David Mitchell and his wife Wanda Barzee, kept Smart imprisoned and subjected her to daily sexual abuse. She was forced to live under Mitchell's strict control and religious delusions. Smart remained missing until March 12, 2003, when a passerby who had just watched America's Most Wanted saw her walking with Mitchell and Barzee in Sandy, Utah. They alerted the police, and Smart was safely reunited with her family.
What was that like when your father walked in that room?
It really was the first time that I felt safe in 9 months, and that I knew that no matter what lay ahead, it was going to be okay because my dad was there and he was not going to let anyone else hurt me.
Adam Walsh.
It is still so hard to hear that detail as you recount it all these years later. I know that this launched you into your life's work, which became trying to keep other people's children safe.
America's Most Wanted was hosted by John Walsh, whose son Adam famously went missing on July 27, 1981. Adam was shopping with his mother in Hollywood, Florida, when he disappeared from a Sears department store. His mom had gone to ask about a lamp, leaving Adam with some other kids who were playing Atari. A scuffle broke out between the children, and a security guard asked them to leave. Walsh, too shy to speak up, left the store and disappeared. 2 weeks later, on August 10th, Walsh's remains were found in a drainage canal along the Florida Turnpike. Police have pegged the crime on famous serial killer Otis Toole, but many people doubt his involvement, citing a recanted confession and a lack of strong evidence.
Serial killer Otis Toole confessed twice but was never tried for the murder. At the time, the Walshes told us Toole wasn't important, saving kids was.
Jaycee Dugard.
Even her face, in some ways, a constant reminder of the time stolen from her. All those years as a captive in a predator's backyard, a prisoner inside a shed.
In June of 1991, 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard was kidnapped while walking to her bus stop in Myers, California. She was taken by Philip and Nancy Garrido and kept hidden in their backyard compound in Antioch for a staggering 18 years. During this time, she was cut off from her family, forced to live under strict control, and impregnated by Garrido. In 2009, Garrido visited UC Berkeley with his and Dugard's 2 daughters, and the group's suspicious behavior caught the attention of campus police. This opened an official investigation. Dugard was later awarded $20 million by the state of California, as Garrido was on parole at the time of her kidnapping.
Hidden from view behind this fence is a secret maze with 2 sheds, 2 tents, a primitive outhouse, and a shower. One of the sheds was even soundproofed. Police even found the silver-colored car used in the kidnapping back in 1991.
Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr.
In the early 1930s, aviator Charles Lindbergh was one of the most famous men in the world. So when Lindbergh's infant son was kidnapped and murdered, the press was quick to dub it the crime of the century.
Called everything from the crime of the century to the biggest story since the resurrection, the Lindbergh kidnapping captivated the world throughout the spring of 1932. The 20-month-old son of aviator Charles Lindbergh and his wife, Ann Morrow, was snatched from his crib on March 1st, and a ransom note was left on the nursery windowsill. So began a media frenzy the likes of which had never been seen before. But despite a massive search and various ransom negotiations, the child's body was discovered in May, less than 5 miles from the Lindbergh estate, confirming that he had been killed shortly after the abduction. Fame aside, it's also an incredibly creepy kidnapping, with the perpetrator having used a ladder to climb into the child's bedroom.
But outside the safety of the Lindbergh home, in the darkness of their 600-acre estate, lurks a clandestine figure. He uses a makeshift ladder to enter the infant's second-floor nursery and snatches Charles Jr. from his crib.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The Chowchilla Kidnapping.
For this woman, stepping onto this school bus is an act of courage. Laura Yazzie Fanning was just 5 years old in kindergarten when 26 of her fellow classmates and their bus driver were kidnapped and buried alive.
How's this for terrifying? 3 armed men storming a school bus and abducting 26 children and 1 driver before storing them all inside an underground trailer. The Chowchilla kidnapping occurred on July 15, 1976, when the kids were coming back from a summer class trip to the Chowchilla Fairgrounds. 3 men hijacked the bus and took their captives to an underground bunker they had constructed in the California rock and gravel quarry. They had intended to ransom the children, but luckily, the captives escaped before they could do so. The 3 abductors were eventually caught and spent decades in prison, but all 3 have since been paroled. Luckily, all of the victims survived, but many continue to suffer from PTSD, depression, and substance use.
I wasn't moving off the bus when they were telling everybody, to get off. One of them got tired of it and came up and said, "Get up," with the gun to my head.
What do you make of these stories? Let us know in the comments below.
Then he took poly class and disappeared into the night.